Hi, my name is Professor Neil Heffernan, and I am actually here to talk to you about the research I do, particularly around a system called ASSISTments. ASSISTments is a free public service at Worcester Polytechnic Institute, and we're currently serving, this slide's already out of date, I think it's 450,000 kids. But anyways, welcome, thank you for inviting me to the fourth Global Summit on Artificial Intelligence and Big Data in Education. I've been a member of the Artificial Intelligence in Education Society for 20 odd years. And so I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on these issues and some disagreements. I'm actually going to focus on the disagreements because I think my worldview on how do we build, how we use AI is different than others. So who am I? I'm a professor, as I said. Actually, I teach AI, and I've been and I use AI in a bunch of ways. But I'm really not going to focus on the use of AI in the assistance system as much as you might think. I like to use AI kind of around the edges and not as part of the core product. But I've been doing this a while. I do it with my wife. My wife is the executive director of the ASSISTments Foundation. And so this is really a husband and wife team. I'm a little more on the AI side and she's a little more on the teacher training side, but we work closely together to try to design interventions that would actually be useful to schools. And sometimes that involves some AI. So what is ASSISTments? It's a platform that teachers use to build their own content. That is, when I say content, problems and feedback that will automatically be given to kids if they ask for it. And teachers either build their own or draw questions from our library and assign it to their kids. Their students get instruction, that is the assistance, while teachers get assessment, thus the name ASSISTments. I got a great, big staff, very fortunate to have a strong amount of funding here in the United States. Apparently, people understand slightly smarter educational software enough to say we should fund this. So if you go to ASSISTments, you'll see one of the big things we have in the bottom on this image is the open educational resource curriculums that we support. We've taken the answers and the problems from all of these curriculums and make sure kids get immediate feedback as they go. These are all given away under permissive Creative Commons licenses. We also do something called skill builders, where a teacher can assign a skill builder and kids have to keep going until they get 3 right in a row. And there's some adaptivity in that. Okay, so I'm going to skip the video of this and due to time. But of course, during COVID times, we've had this huge surge. We normally have 300 teachers a month making an account, and during the beginning of the pandemic, it was in the 6,000, 7,000 range. And again, this slide's out of date. I said there's almost 500,000 kids, and we have not updated the dots on this map, but we're pretty much all over the United States. So what is ASSISTments? ASSISTments is about feedback. Kids do their work on a piece of paper, possibly in a team, but what we really do, I think, well, is we operate in a space that relies on and supports the teacher. So in this example, the teacher has noticed that kids mess this up. And how does she notice that? Well, if you zoom in on this little portion of the video where it says the common wrong answer is 1, that is see here, right here, 1 that means 80% of the kids that got this wrong said 1, not -5. And here the teacher is using this as an example to kind of talk about, hey, lots of you messed this up, but you're not alone. And when you think about math anxiety, being able to know, oh, if you're the only one that thinks you messed this up, that could kind of be hurtful. So now I want to tell you about a big randomized control trial that was done where we compared ourselves to business as usual. But first, let me show you what business as usual looks like. I'm going to play you a little video.
Don't take out your homework from last night. Here are the answers. So you're going
I'm going to pause. pause because this video is really boring. It takes 2 minutes for actually anyone to ask the teacher a question. But many of us might recognize this is what homework looks like. Homework review looks like actually traditionally. In the experimental condition where teachers actually go over homework differently, let's see what that looks like.
Okay, so we're gonna go over your homework from last night if you want to get out your sheets. A couple questions I noticed we did pretty poorly on.
She already knows which questions.
First question we're gonna look at is this one here. 3 to the negative second times 3 to the negative 8. Common wrong answer was 1 over 9 to the 10. What's wrong with 1 over 9 to the 10? They multiply 3 times 3.
I get really excited because 26 seconds in the class, she's able to talk about something that actually 56% of the kids that got it wrong actually made the same error. And talking about that is really useful. So does it work? So this assessment system, we actually, let's just be clear, most things actually don't work. If you go read the book, Show Me the Evidence, they quote actually Ron Barron, actually John Barron is talking about how most of the interventions that have been actually funded by the federal government actually have not actually led to reliably positive improvements. Stenberger, Hu, and Cooper actually, who reviewed actually intelligent tutoring systems for K-12 systems in mathematics, had this to say, that the effects of these intelligent tutoring systems tend to be small to modest, and they might actually contribute to the achievement gap. So that's what we were up against. So we wanted to conduct a study. Somewhere around 2009, I started to realize, oh, the governor of Maine actually bought these laptops for every kid in the state. And so I recruited 44 schools to participate in a randomized control trial run by Stanford Research International, that is SRI, where actually these schools were actually paired by SRI based upon actually similar demographics, and then they were randomly assigned into continue using existing methods, which even though every one of these teachers had actually had laptops in their classroom for like over 8 years, lots of them weren't actually using the laptops to support children in their nightly homework. So we came in and did that. What does it look like? Well, actually, not all the teachers were using open educational resources. So we actually took books like this book, and the kids would go home, would take their textbook, do their work on paper, and after attempting each problem, they would actually input their answer into assessments. We wouldn't actually, I don't want to get sued, so we don't put the questions in. The question just says page 48, actually number 12, and then actually students will get immediate feedback, whether they get it right or wrong. We didn't actually have hint messages for every one of these questions, just to be clear. What's a skill builder? Skill builder looks a little different. Skill builders use, you keep going until you get 3 right in a row, as demonstrated in this little image here. And teachers got reports on who exceeded the daily limit. We would cut off a child after doing 10 problems incorrectly and say, you need to go talk to your teacher and you cannot proceed. And we don't want kids banging their head against a brick wall. Otherwise, assistants is going to keep saying the same sorts of hints. And these skill builders, by the way, we do give out actually hints. Anyways, in 2016, the director of that project, Jeremy Rochelle, was asked to present at the White House on the main finding. I encourage you to go read the paper. The 3 main findings: teachers reliably changed their practice. They went over homework differently. We actually had a huge gain on average and quite reliable. And we actually started closing achievement gaps. That is, kids that were below the median on the prior year's state test score almost doubled actually the normative expectation of change. We are one of the few projects that are, say, for instance, in the evidence for ESSA for middle school mathematics that has strong evidence. So that's all great and all, but how's what we do differently? Well, there's many products out there like Carnegie Learning's Mathia or McGraw-Hill's Alex or IXL that they really believe in student pacing. If a student learns something, why bother holding them back? That in theory sounds like a great idea. Like, who wants to hold back kids? That sounds like a bad idea, right? I'm here to tell you that's a good idea. If you want teachers to actually adopt and use this to get better as a teacher, then you do. If the only thing you want to do is build your intelligent tutoring system and assume teachers know nothing. And I have friends that have built actually things, say intelligent tutoring systems in Tanzania, where we're assuming the teacher actually, there is no teacher. And so if you want to build that sort of intelligent tutoring system, that's a totally different deal. But if you want to build a tool that actually works with the teacher to augment the teacher, that is, we actually have some adaptive components, but augmented learning is where you need to figure out how to use AI to augment what the teacher can pay attention to. Let me try to give you actually a little bit of an example before we run out of time. So I told you the ASSISTments vision is to crowdsource different things, that is hints, explanations, scaffolding questions, common wrong answers, which YouTube videos should we give out, which questions kids ask about specific problems. We also want to crowdsource stuff from teachers. What are the instructional recommendations for new problems and the mappings of problems to skills, or which messages should we give out to students? That actually is also important. Let me give you a quick example of that. So when I was doing my study in the state of Maine, actually I met this guy, Chris Siege. He had used my system to write hint messages for every question in his textbook. The other teachers that were using that same book actually couldn't actually go follow Mr. Lesiege's feedback and say, I want to actually use that. And so, because I actually hadn't thought anyone would want to do that. But I think of actually a project more like Wikipedia, that is actually a project that allows people to contribute and other people to benefit from. So I got funding from the Office of Naval Research for what we call Teacher Assist. We added this little link, I want to write an explanation, that little blue link. So a teacher could actually write that in a way such that actually we're going to be able to crowdsource that, send that actually out to other people as well. So if they clicked on that link, they would actually say, hey, do you want to write an explanation or a hint? I'll let you read the paper that I'll tell you about in a second. But what are those types of explanations? So we're using these open educational resources. And so to just give you a sense, I'll actually bring Andrew Burnett up here for a second to give you an example of the type of what we think of as an explanation, which is a video.
So this is exactly what it looks like for the student. So let's say the student looks at this problem and they're not really sure how to solve it. So they just enter an answer and they answered incorrectly. It tells them that they're wrong because they've tried once and they're going to try again and they get it wrong. And then they try it a third time and they answered incorrectly. Take a look at what pops up. It's a video that I made using the whiteboard app, Explain Everything. And then they just click on the video and the video will run. So we have quadrilateral A here, and I'm going to make a little, and it will take them through the problem and it will show them how to solve the problem. And when they get all the way to the end, it will actually tell them what the answer is. 12. So the perimeter.
All right, I'll pause. So that's what an explanation looks like. So imagine if we had actually hundreds of teachers actually going and writing explanations, kind of like Mr. Lesiege. Would that be good? Well, we wanted to find out if actually, not if actually an explanation written by a teacher helps that teacher's kids. We wanted to figure out, could we actually take what I would call a motley crew of teachers that actually, we recruited 8 teachers to come work with us. And they wrote explanations or hint messages, whichever they liked, for their own kids. So do these messages cause better learning? There's a good chance this actually won't work, right? Our textbook publishers would love to actually tell us, no, you need to trust us. We've actually got this figured out. We're going to use consistent language all the time. We're always going to talk about the numerator and the denominator. That's what we use here in America for actually the number on the top and the number on the bottom. But if other teachers are using the number on the top and the number on the bottom, then they're going to get actually told this information in maybe inconsistent ways. Maybe that would hurt learning. So we were curious to know. Turns out, nope, it really worked. We actually, we just won Best Student Paper at the Learning at Scale conference. And I encourage you to go read this paper. Here's the abstract. But we actually tested this idea across, 18,000 problems. This is a big study. The main thing we actually found, though, is actually if you get a teacher actually explanation versus not getting a teacher explanation, that is, we randomize that, you learn more. I'm not really expecting the Nobel Prize committee to call me tomorrow saying, you proved that actually getting teachers explanations is better than not. in one sense, it's kind of a little intuitive that that should be true, but it's really good that we proved it's true. What that really means is the study we did in Maine, we just made better, reliably better, because we just added this one thing on top of it, which is, remember how I told you in the state of Maine in that study, kids didn't actually have hint messages? Well, now they do. And we have actually now written hint messages for the two most commonly used actually math curriculums in the middle school grades. That is Engage New York and Illustrative Mathematics. Those two of the three OERs that I showed you on the front slide. The other thing we actually learned is we found out that we found more crystal teachers. We found more teachers. At 146 teachers actually write at least one teacher assist, 29 teachers made more than 50, and we found 2 that made over 1,000. And so there's all sorts of questions about how do you scale this up? How do you figure out, okay, which teachers should we bother actually sharing and when should we do it? I've asked my actually content staff to actually go look at some of these teachers, particularly these 2 teachers that made over 1,000, to kind of be like, do we want to actually, do we like those enough that actually they're not going to embarrass us if we actually start running studies with them? Remember, our main goal is to try to figure out what on average works well, but also what actually helps actually the students that actually are coming in that are either low income or actually historically underrepresented minority like African Americans or Hispanics. What types of feedback actually are most helpful for them? Let me give you an example when I say we're looking for personalization. So there's a paper I wrote in 2009, actually at the Artificial Intelligence Conference, is listed here at the bottom of the screen, to tutor or not to tutor. We compared actually giving kids a complete solution versus actually breaking the problem down in steps in what we call tutor problem solving feedback. This graph right here is showing what we call a crossover interaction, which is we found that for lower knowledge students, we should give them scaffolding questions, and higher knowledge students, we should actually give them solutions, that is, assign them to solution strategy. We're looking, and what our nation needs and what our world needs is ways of finding personalization results. That if anyone's trying to tell you, hey, we've figured out how to do personalization well at scale, they're a liar, okay? No one knows how to do this very well. I've run 24 randomized control trials, and we get a result like this only once out of every 20 times. Most of the time, we find out that actually one of these lines is just above one of the other lines. It doesn't matter what type of kid, X is better than Y on average. And so I don't want to actually oversell the, where's the state of the art in personalization. Another example I actually want to give, and that I think is actually considerably, I get excited about, is how teachers respond to open-ended questions. And so we have something, this data is actually pretty old, but actually at one point we had 3 million open response questions that have been answered by students, but actually only like 10% of them had been graded by teachers, and 1 to 2% of them got a comment. And of course, these open-ended responses, the computer can't grade. So we need a teacher to say something. Otherwise, the kid practices but gets no feedback. And if you only get feedback on one out of every 10 problems, that's maybe not the best thing in the world. So we were like, why don't we use some artificial intelligence to actually help teachers respond to student responses, kind of the way Google Smart Reply. Here in America, Google Smart Reply is actually on Gmail, but I bet there's similar situations going on in China where the AI is saying, hey, maybe you want to respond to with one of these 3 actually messages. So why can't we make that for teachers? So this is a picture from a grant from 3 years ago where I said, we're going to actually try to do this. We're going to try to help teachers with these. Here, in this case, we have 3 students work by Sachi, Ganji, and Wei. Of course, not their real names, but it's their real actually statements. And we want to predict everything to the right of the arrow. Can we actually predict the diagnosis? Can we predict the grade the teacher would give from 0 to 4 in this case? And can we actually predict a comment they might want to give out? Maybe for the Sachi student who did a really good job and identified there's a break-even point at 100 members, whether you should use one thing or another. This is simultaneous linear equations, is what we call this in America. you probably want to say something good. And for this Ganji student, who his explanation just says one's better than the other with no explanation at all, you probably deserve 0 points. And you should tell the kid, say more, put in more effort. And finally, there's a kid in the middle, Wei, who actually has got the answer halfway correct, that 72 people, it would be better for Mountain Charter, but she doesn't actually show any understanding. There's a break-even point. And so giving a comment like, is it true for all instances? Or what about 115, which is above the break-even point? That would probably be a really good teacher comment to actually make. Anyways, we've been working on this for a while. We have one paper that says we can score pretty well. That is, we can predict the grade, the thing we call grade. But scoring's old hat. This is actually a version that was actually an early version. By the way, during the pandemic, teachers wrote 17,000, this is April, 17,000 times did a teacher send out a comment. So we see this big burst where teachers are actually trying to communicate to their children in some way that actually is like personalized. So let me show you a teacher using this. So this is Catherine Taylor in Kentucky, and she uses the system. And here's her suggested messages, and then she can write her own teacher feedback if she doesn't like them. Catherine actually loves this system, and she says the average teacher is going to be more likely to give a comment just because ASSISTments gave them a starter. She also trains other teachers using ASSISTments, and she's like, this encourages teachers to give more open-ended questions. I'm actually super happy that teachers like Catherine, and I'll skip the next teacher, like it. Because right now, we're not actually doing a killer job. Of the 18,000 times we presented a teacher with 3 comments, 53% of the time, they will actually use one of the suggested things and edit it. That means 47% of the time, they don't use any of our 3 suggestions. And there's 34% of the time, they will actually use directly, they'll just pick one of the 3. I'm not sure what should be a high bar. I'm pretty happy, I guess, with 33%, but I know we want to do better. And I think there's ample room to do better. So let me tell you where I'm actually, I know we're not doing a very good job. We're doing a great job if the computer predicts they're going to get a 4, then there's a 64% chance in the bottom right that actually we will actually, the teacher will just pick one of our 3 and hit send. And if the computer suggests that the kid is going to get a 0, there's a 40% chance. Those numbers are pretty high. But look, we do really badly, actually. If the computer thinks there's a little bit of knowledge there, the teachers almost hardly ever just pick one of our options and send it. They do that 8% of the time. I know why I think that is, because the comments that we're giving right now are very generic. We actually need to build our machine learned models to do a better job of making the comments specific to the individual. So we're doing a good job for the Sachi and Ganji, but we're doing a really bad job, or I'm not sure we should say really bad, but actually I know we can do better, and we're building actually models right now that are specific. That is, we're machine learning models. One of the cool things I really want to say about this project, and what gives me a lot of hope, is every time a teacher says, I don't like any of your 3 options, that's really useful for us, right? And every time they pick one, that's useful for us. Every time they tell us we got the grade wrong, that's useful for us. That just actually feeds back into our machine learned system. So anyways, the big picture we're at is and I'm going to stop screen sharing. The big picture, as far as I'm concerned, is we actually want to figure out how to actually take ideas from teachers and build architecture such that we can actually use machine learning to take those ideas and try to see if we can scale them. So I'm actually out of time, and I've been asked to actually answer the following question. If your research was applied into educational practice, what do you consider the biggest opportunity, and what is the biggest challenge? Well, I think the biggest opportunity is if people take seriously this idea that we can that instead of trying to get the artificial intelligence to solve all the problems and actually generate hint messages all by themselves, or messages to help actually children actually get motivated. Instead, let's figure out how to actually machine learn from what teachers are actually already doing. Like that to me is the opportunity. I see here in America, we have things like Wikipedia, which are huge free resources. I see things like Stack Overflow, where actually people are answering people's questions. If you don't know Stack Overflow, check it out. It's a wonderful, pretty much if you're a computer scientist here in America, you'll Google questions and you will actually wind up at a Stack Overflow page. They're crowdsourcing answers to questions, actually. I think the opportunity is figuring out how to use machine learning to actually do this. What's the biggest challenge? Biggest challenge, I think there's a bunch of challenges. There's the challenge of actually, how do you figure out how to scale up what works? And also at the same time, run experiments so you learn what works. Wikipedia doesn't have any dependent measures that allow us to know, is this article better? It's just whoever last changed the article. I'm kind of amazed how well it works, given that there's no real infrastructure to reliably know if you're making improvement. It's just other people that are Wikipedia editors have opinions and they will actually go change it on you. I'm amazed at how well that works. But as a scientist, I don't get excited about that. I'm impressed with the way actually sites like the way actually Stack Overflow work, where they have a pretty cool mechanism by which actually they incentivize people that are contributing and at the same time kind of grade how well their contributions are. But the problem with all that is just people's opinions about how helpful they thought that message was. It's not like actually after every Stack Overflow person actually Googles a question and they think they got the answer from Stack Overflow. There's not like a quiz that's kind of like, hey, can you now apply this in a new setting to find out, did you really learn? Or do you just think you learned? So anyways, I think those are the biggest challenges. With that, I will say thank you very much for inviting me. I hope you actually found this useful. Bye-bye.